think we can proceed with the. Thank you, Baha. I think we will proceed with the next video where we can see the people pruning the branches and the children help the harvest. Just would like to tell the audience that the video is a little bit smaller, but maybe our team can work on posting it on our social media. So just maybe look up for that, okay? That's all for this live chit chat, inshallah.
Arnau, what are you doing here? Yeah, it's a never-ending. Yeah, it's a never-ending process, right? Yeah. And is it frustrating? Why are you doing it?
Where?
Why are you doing it?
Why? Well, for multiple reasons. First, because it needs a lot of people. That's the first thing. Secondly, because it's good to help the community. And it's a social thing to see around. It's a good gathering alternative and good option to learn about the land where we are.
And what did you learn about Tuwalada today?
What did I learn?
About Tuwalada today, yeah.
I learned that olive trees are indeed a very important thing for the community. And I guess it shows as well resilience of this community. Yeah, and it's critical for their economy.
Let me tell you.
So,
It's the act of wear.
I don't know what you're recording though.
No, I'm recording for my friends in Malaysia who cannot be here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So tell them to come.
So they, well, Israel would not allow it
From Malaysia.
Yeah.
Why?
because Israel is racist.
Malaysia? What?
Yeah, there's no diplomatic connections, and Israel doesn't issue visas. Is this good enough, Ezra? ليش شو بتعبي؟ شو بتسوي يا عيسى؟ بتعبي زيتون لإيش؟ شو بتسوي منه؟ زيت وايش؟ قديش عمرك عيسى؟ 9 سنين؟ قديش سنة إلك بتزيد زيتون؟ بس؟ وأنا بعرفك من 5 سنين. So, yeah, like it's just like, what are you doing? His name is Isa. And I was asking him what he's doing, and he's like, yeah, just collecting olives. Why are you doing it? For the oil and for the olives. And I asked him for how long he's been picking, and he said like 2 years. Well, I've known Isa for 5 years, and I've only known him on the field here. Could you just tell my friends in Malaysia, why are you doing this? I'm not making you speak. God made you speak.
I don't even know how.
Hold on. So this is my friend Maria, and she's one of the volunteers today. So like, what are you doing here, Maria?
Hi everyone. Yeah, for me this is mainly a way of supporting Palestinian families, not only on the harvesting but also on working on the land that it's systematically attacked.
And yeah, how easy is all the picking?
Sorry?
How easy is all the picking?
How easy? I think when we come, let's say international people, we always think it's easier than it will be in the end. It's quite long and it needs really, like, you need to be focused.
And patient?
And patient, sure. Patient, always here. In Palestine, you always need to be patient.
So, like, can you tell people what you learned about the Walaja and olive trees today?
About Al-Walaja, yeah, I already been there before. And I know it's a village which contains, let's say, you can explain the whole occupation and colonization of Palestine through Al-Walaja. And there is a village which has been, like, from 1948, let's say, systematically erased, like people on the village has been systematically erased from the land. A lot of them are facing home demolitions. A lot of them lost their homes and lands. There is people which houses are surrounded or controlled by the wall and by the army. We can see from here at least 2 settlements. And yeah, this is mainly how can you learn of people still resisting in these conditions.
Thank
Good.
you. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Shukran. Shukran, Maria. Maria is from Catalonia, Barcelona, in Spain. And also Arrao is from there. So like we were lucky just meeting the Catalans. But also we have a few other people. All of them work with different NGOs, so they did not travel to Palestine for the olive harvest. They have jobs from like development agencies in their sending countries. So let me just stand by.
Welcome back, everyone. And Baha, that was the final video for the day, where the focus was on international volunteers and their involvement in Palestine. And it's a political statement, isn't it? It's not just about picking olives, but standing as human shields against all of Israeli atrocities, which include farming, fishing, home demolition, and obviously olive harvesting. Now, can you just enlighten us on how old is this tradition of international volunteers coming into Palestine as human shield? Of course, the most memorable of these human shields is Rachel Corrie, isn't it, who gave up her life standing in front of the bulldozer. So how long have they been coming to Palestine?
Let's say foreigners who would come in to learn about Palestine and then recognize the atrocities and also realize that, you know, maybe their passport will provide them with some kind of like diplomatic protection. It has been going on ever since 1947, 1948. So it comes hand in hand with the beginnings of the oppression. It have become more and more popular since Palestinians realized that we will never get governmental protection from any governments around the world. So we're calling on citizens from those countries that have diplomatic relations with the state of Israel to do what their governments have failed to do. So Rachel Corrie would not come here if the American government would stop supplying the state of Israel with weapons needed to destroy Palestinian lives. So what Rachel Corrie did was the ethical thing that's expected from her government to do. So like she was here simply because of the failure of her government to stand for human rights in Palestine. And we have like a lot of people that come from those countries to try to fulfill the duties that their governments have failed to do, experience Palestine, go back home, and educate people on the failure of their government to actually provide protection for Palestinians. Not only that failure, but doing the complete opposite, where they maintain economic, diplomatic, and military connections with the state of Israel. So like they are supporting the oppression and of the Palestinian people and supporting the destruction of Palestinian lives in a direct way. So when you are a citizen of a country that supports the destruction of Palestinian lives, and you are a person who is decent and who stands and believes in people's rights to justice, equality, and so on, you try to fulfill the role that the government have failed to do. It have become more popular, like also in the Second Intifada. In the Second Intifada, like we saw like a campaign of violence where Palestinians were murdered by the hundreds, and governments around the world would not even question the relation between like their support to the state of Israel and the murder of Palestinians. But like many citizens have decided that they want to come in and protest against Israeli brutality and against their government's complicity in what's happening on what's happening here. Of course, like Western governments are very smart because they confuse us. They provide diplomatic, economic, and military connection to the state of Israel, and then they provide Palestinians with some humanitarian aid. And ironically enough, like recently, the state of Israel declared 6 human rights organizations in Palestine to be terrorist organizations, you know? So it's a matter of time until the state of Israel start accusing those complicit governments with supporting terrorism, you know? So like even to help Palestinians survive Israeli oppression is no good for the Israeli government. Like if you help Palestinians document Israeli criminal behavior, protest Israeli criminal behavior, then you are deemed a terrorist. And that's once again like is an evidence of the fascist nature of the state of Israel, because only fascist regimes have declared human rights organizations to be a threat or to be terrorist or to be, you know, delegitimized in a way. So it's all connected. You do what your government have failed to do.
Yeah, so where governments fail, individuals and civil societies have to step our game up right now. I'm sure many of us would love to be in Palestine during olive harvest and other important events, but unfortunately, logistically, that's very difficult, if not impossible for many of us, right? Baha, please just tell us, what can we do? We're halfway across the world. We're seeing this on a daily basis. We're activists. We're trying to do as much as we can, but tell us, what else can we do?
My dear, like you're doing what you can, and what needs to be done is very simple. What needs to be done is end of Israeli apartheid. But of course, this is not like our, you know, like we can't do that. So instead of like thinking of what needs to be done, we all think of what we individually and collectively can do. So if you can help with planting a tree, then do that. If you can help with, you know, for me, like, you know, it's humbling to know that there are like pieces of Palestine in 100 hands, you know, because of you. It's like it's what you can do as an individual. If you can get some olive oil, get some olive oil. If you can get prayer beads, get prayer beads. If you can like support Palestinians by amplifying their voices, do that. If you can educate individuals about the true nature of the Israeli oppressor, then do that. So it's what talents you are blessed with, what skills you have, and how you can just integrate Palestine with the skills that you do. Like if you are a teacher, teach your students. If you are a student, learn more. If you are a doctor, like educate people on the hardships of like the Palestinian health sector and how like the state of Israel have been producing victim after victim who are like limbs are decapitated because of Israeli oppression and so on. If you are like an architect, like try to see how the state of Israel have been like, you know, working on the destruction of Palestinians' homes and try to figure out like a creative idea of like how you can survive destruction of homes and so on and so forth. Like many Palestinians learned from foreign architects to, you know, like to let's say like how to build out of tires, and learn that from like impoverished communities in Brazil. So like it depends on what you have, and if you think you cannot do nothing, you know, then you think wrong of yourself, I would say, because yes, we are as vulnerable as individuals, but at the same time, we are as powerful as individuals. So yeah, like it depends on what, like for you, like as I know, you for one person, like you've been doing a lot. Like I'm so impressed by your involvement, your activism, and trying to always like bring the word out, trying to educate people on different aspects, and like you do what you can, and that's very inspiring and very beautiful.
I think at the end of the day, we kind of make this mistake of doing nothing because we think we can only do very little, right? Mm-hmm. But we forget that a little bit of something from everyone makes a whole lot, right? Mm-hmm. You know, the end game, the sum game is a lot, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's a little bit or a lot, whether you're with an NGO or whether you're an individual, right? And one of the bandwagons I think we should all be jumping onto is BDS. Right? Mm-hmm. Look up BDS Malaysia. For our Malaysian viewers, look up BDS Malaysia. There is an active boycott Puma campaign going on. Look at the target products here in Malaysia. Mm-hmm. So and just by simply boycotting these products, you're doing a big part already, because it's about isolating Israel, right? Mm-hmm. And pushing it into a corner and telling it that your apartheid policies are not acceptable, right? Just like what we did in South Africa. Now, there was a question earlier, Baha. You mentioned that the internationals are not subject to Israeli laws.
Israeli military law.
Israeli military law. So there was a question, what about Malaysians? Are they subject to Israeli
Anybody? No. Here's the thing. The state of Israel subjects the Palestinians in Palestine to 4 different separate sets of laws. You know, this is very confusing. It's like we are ruled by 4 oppressors in 4 different ways. But in fact, like we don't have 4 oppressors, we have one that rules us in 4 different ways. So the laws applied on Palestinians in Nazareth are racist in a way that is different than the laws applied on Palestinians in Jerusalem, that are racist in a different way than the laws applied on Palestinians on the occupied West Bank. And those are different from the racist laws applied on Palestinians in Gaza. So the law you will be subject to as a person who gets a visa to Israel, you know, is very similar to the law applied on Jewish Israelis. It's exactly like what kind of a law I would be subject to if I would come to Malaysia, right? So if the Malaysian government is oppressing people based on religion or skin color, I would not be subject to that oppression. Why? Because I have a visa from the government, so I have more rights and privileges than the oppressed people. So you like Ezra, you spent more time in Jerusalem than I probably spent in my lifetime. So it's because I'm subject to a military rule.
That's a
and you're,
tragedy, right? That's just a travesty of justice, you know.
But that's what, like, there is a loophole there, you know, and we take advantage of that. Like when we want something from Jerusalem, we ask our foreigner friends to do it, you know. I just got a bottle of water from the sea in Gaza, you know, because I'm not allowed to go to Gaza. So a friend of mine who works in a development organization was like, I'm going there. What do you want me to bring? And I was like, a bottle of seawater.
Wonderful, wonderful.
You know?
Now, Baha, it sounds like we are going to have to revive the prayer beads project that we did earlier, because there are many comments coming through saying that they would love to get a hold of these prayer beads.
It's a piece of Palestine in people's hands, and it has a story,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So for the benefit of audience here, earlier this year we had organized an international conference, a virtual international conference, and we had brought in some prayer beads. Baha helped facilitate that, and they were made from olive wood, and they sold out like even before they got here, right? Sounds like from the comments we're going to have to replicate this again. Inshallah, we will be in touch. Right, Baha, we're going to be closing our session soon. I'm so glad to have you with us and walking us through the traditional olive harvest and everything that's connected with it, right? The difficulty, these challenges, and the festive atmosphere despite the challenges. I think that's important for us to remember and to part ways on, right? That despite the challenges, despite the oppression, despite the difficulties, families gather and still have fun and still bring warmth to the occasion, right? So maybe we can end on that positive note, Baha, your parting thoughts.
Yeah, what comes to mind always when we are talking about, you know, the different forms of survival of Israeli oppression, like we always try to be creative. We always try to be respectful of life and grateful that we are alive. We are caught between two extreme forms of joy and misery. So extremely miserable and extremely joyful at the same time. And what always comes to mind is the words of our Palestinian poet, Rafif Ziyadah, who says, like, we teach life, sir. And that's it. Like, in the shade of an olive tree, just next to an apartheid wall that's aimed at destroying your life, you still like appreciate life, like feel grateful for those who left you with those blessing trees, and you don't give in to the racist motivations of those who are working tirelessly to destroy our lives and rob us of our properties. So we teach life, madam.
We teach life. Yes, Tunku Sarah, that poet that Baha just spoke about, is a young woman, and her name is Rafif Ziyadah. She became famous with her poem "We Teach Life" many years ago. And thank you, Baha. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Just an update on the funds we collected. We had targeted to raise 10,000 ringgit for Palestinian families, and alhamdulillah, we raised 20,000, which means that more families can benefit. Yeah. So please keep your donations coming through. I say this countless times, right? Being in NGO activities since early 2000, over 20 years, I'm shameless when it comes to soliciting funds, right? Please give where you can, because it's for the benefit of people who really desperately need it, right? Thank you, Baha, once again. Thank you, Nawal, for being with us today. Dr. Fauzia, the president of MWCQP. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our tour, and please forgive us for shortcomings. This is our first virtual tour, yeah, and we will learn from this, and inshallah, we will improve by leaps and bounds in the future. Thank you once again. Have a blessed day, everyone, wherever you are.